So I'm going to call the meeting to order, and I'm going to introduce our clerk is Karen today. I should say Miss Robertson. I have to get professional now. Is there any introduction of late items, Miss Robertson?
There is one, and that's adding of correspondence regarding the Accessibility Act of Canada, and it will be considered under item 8C, other business.
Thank you. So can I have a motion for the adoption of the agenda as amended? Moved by Linda Dirksen, seconded by Richard Harlow. All in favor? Motion carries. Okay. Can you hear us on the Zoom? Is it good enough for you? You can just put your thumbs up or a wave. Perfect. Thank you. Okay, Chair's report, that'll be me. So my name is Cheryl Armstrong. I'm a city councillor. I'm on my second and a half term, as I call it. So into the third. I chaired the accessibility committee last time with Councillor Martman, and it was a real pleasure. Like we accomplished so much, and I always left the room feeling happy because people weren't negative. Like a lot of times I deal with a lot of negativity, and it's just people were so happy to be at the table, to have their voice heard, and watch some of your stuff be implemented. So I'm really looking forward to this again. Unfortunately, we don't have Indigenous representation. We tried, but we couldn't get it. So the province said we could still move ahead because we had lots of efforts to do that. When it comes to diversity, we reached out to the Pride Society, to many different societies, and there was just no interest. So a lot of what we're probably going to do is going to be centered around accessibility, but if there's diversity stuff that you feel is important or comes up, please let us know, because we can certainly address it. It's very important, and we can also invite different groups in for delegations to talk about their issues and see if we can work with them to solve them. So it'll be just a little bit about me. I policed for 36 years, then ran in the by-election, was successful, and then ran in the last 2 elections and successful. So I'll just pass it on now, and I'm going to go to Mr. Harlow to introduce himself, who was a previous committee member as well.
Yes, so I do have that prior committee history and knowledge. Been here in Nanaimo most of my life, and have a degree in visual arts and psychology, and I like to bring a lot of my universal design principles into physical and digital spaces, so yeah.
Thank you. Nicole?
I'm Nicole Sugiyama. I'm an occupational therapist. I work at the Child Development Center and on contract with the school district at 68. I am here most of my life, including working for the city of Nanaimo a long time as a leader in recreation programs.
Awesome. Thank you for your time.
John Cowan, I'm retired, enjoying every bit of it. I was born and raised in Nanaimo. I've lived here almost all my life. I have been involved in almost everything that's gone on in the city. I go back to my first position was on the Recreation Commission for Bevan Park when it was still owned by the regional district.
Wow. That's great. Thank you. Bae?
Hi, I'm Bae Kinraid, they, she pronouns. I'm a sociology student at VIU. My studies often bring me into sort of how social structures interact with disability and things like community accessibility. And I am a person with disabilities.
Okay. Thank you. Linda?
I'm a professor at the university, missing a hip, and for the last 5 years I've been working as our universal access lead on campus. So I don't teach at all anymore. I just build ramps and advise on buildings and chase engineers and things like that. And I'm originally from Edmonton.
Thank you, Linda.
Nice are here.
Yeah. Alexandria?
I've lived in Nanaimo for over 20 years now. Parent advocate and self-advocate, and I also sit on the board of Clay Tree Society for people with developmental disabilities.
And
the CLBC Community Council.
Great. Thank you. Thank you for all your community
don't
service.
forget that.
Wendy?
How many hours do you have?
Yeah.
I haven't always lived in here. I was from England many years ago, 1 or 2. Warped sense of humour. I have 4 children, 3 out of 4 have a diverse ability. I'm involved in the community in every which way that I possibly can. I won't go into all the details.
Okay, thank you. And I'm going to go to Tanya.
Hello, my name is Tanya Burzwich. I've lived in Nanaimo all my life. I'm a school trustee currently for in the Nanaimo Ladysmith Public Schools, District 68. I have a lot of experience. My background is advocacy for people with kids and families with disabilities and working a lot with adults. And I'm just really excited to be here.
Great, thank you. Tammy, we'll go to you next.
Hi, I'm Tammy Hirasawa. I am a physiotherapist at the Nanaimo Child Development Center, and I also work in the School District 68 as a physical therapist, and I'm happy to be here as well.
Great, thank you. And Jocelyn, you're here, I think?
I am, thank you.
Great.
I'm Jocelyn Maffin, and I am the Associate Director of Spinal Cord Injury BC, and I have lived in Nanaimo for 5 years, and I've served on the City of Vancouver and the City of New Westminster's Disability Access Committees of various stripes, and my lived experience is related to chronic disease, and I'm live with paralysis, paraplegia, and I use a wheelchair.
Great, thank you, and welcome back. Jocelyn also served last time and was a great help. We referred a lot of stuff to her, and she always took it and answered people's inquiries, so I really appreciated that, Jocelyn. It was great, thank you.
Glad to help.
I'm just gonna go fast and have staff do a fast introduction as well, because you'll see these faces regularly. Mr. Harding?
Richard Harding, General Manager of Parks, Recreation and Culture.
Darcy Osborne, Director of Recreation and Culture.
Hi, I'm Laura Clarkson. My pronouns are she and her, and I'm a manager in the Recreation Services area.
Natalie?
Natalie Sponigal, Communications Advisor for the city.
Bill Sims, General Manager, Engineering Public Works. Glad the invitation to be around.
I'm Calista Lindgren, I'm a steno in Legislative Services. I'm Alyssa Janakis, also a steno in Legislative Services.
And Karen Robertson, and I'm the Deputy City Clerk in Legislative Services.
And you're gonna be our key person for the committee, correct?
For a little bit.
Yeah, for now.
That's actually, that's free
Yeah.
as the main, but as a clerk side of it.
Yeah, for the clerk side, yeah. All right.
Lisa over.
Oh, I didn't see you, Lisa, I'm sorry.
That's okay,
Oh,
Manager of Community Planning.
Thank you very much, Lisa. All right, so I just wanna actually we'll do this later because it'll come up, I think, in Karen's, and I can add it if I feel I need to. So I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Harding now to go over the terms of reference.
Right. Thank you, everyone. Thank you again for your commitment and listening to how many people have been here for a long time in the city of Nanaimo. Your commitment to the community and this committee, and as Councillor Armstrong mentioned, we got a lot done in the last term, and we got a lot done because of the input from the committee. So it really is a committee that has input, and you'll see your input in action. I'll talk a little bit as I go through the terms of reference of how interdepartmental this committee is, but first of all, I'm just going to go through the purpose. So if you turn to page 3 of your agenda, can everybody back online hear me okay? Great.
Thumbs up.
I am going to read verbatim the purpose, and then what the committee should be working on, and then just because I think sometimes we kind of assume everyone's going to read this. I think as a group it's good for us just to go through it, so I'm just going to read it verbatim. The purpose of the committee. The purpose of the Advisory Committee on Accessibility and Inclusiveness is to provide social and political equity within existing and proposed city plans, policies, bylaws, and infrastructure, and make recommendations to ensure that they are inclusive and accommodating to citizens of all ages, abilities, and walks of life. It's important that that's Council's purpose, and Council's very committed to this creation of this committee and its function. So the Advisory Committee of Accessibility and Inclusiveness will identify barriers to inclusion and accessibility and make recommendations as to how to remove those barriers or these barriers, identify best practices in other communities and make recommendations based on the findings to promote social and political equity, participate in reviewing City of Nanaimo draft plans, policies, and procedures to prevent the creation of barriers in the future. I will stop on that one. You don't want every development permit or every rezoning, and we're not going to be doing that to the committee, but there's some key plans that we do bring to you as we did in the past. But there's so much material that goes through the city, but Council's very, again, inclusive of the kind of plans they want this committee to look at. And we can talk later on about some examples of that. Assist in the development of strategy to engage with the community on issues relating to accessibility and inclusiveness. Review city plans, empower Nanaimo goals and identify opportunities to support the related policies. So last term, we did reimagine city plan and it's now been adopted, and Ms. Brinkman's going to do a presentation on the empowered section of city plan. And we are really a staff and council following the objectives of the plan. We had some integrated actions that we're trying to do at the city plan. So a lot of that work was done by the committee last term. It's in place, and now it's a chance how we can move some of those policies and goals forward. And Ms. Brinkman will talk about some of that. Review and provide feedback on the city's accessibility actions and implement city plan. Discuss other issues related to the community by council, the CAO, GMs, or directors, and work with council to increase public awareness on issues related to accessibility and inclusion for all citizens. Any questions on that first of all before I go on? Again, it's important that we go through it because I think there's a lot there. It's a lot that we're asking the committee to do and we want you to do. Membership I won't go through because you know if you're here how you qualify to be membership, so I won't go through that. Same for eligibility. Meeting frequency, so typically the committee meets every 2 months. There are times though where we've had to have increased number of meetings if we're working on a specific project or policy. Like for example, the city plan, we had to meet a few extra times, but right now it's every 2 months, but as we move along that could be more frequent. And staff support, this is what I want to really mention. On the paper it shows Parks, Recreation, and Culture is kind of the real coordinators of the committee, but this truly is a interdepartmental committee. And I say that with all knowledge that it actually was last year, or last term. Engineering was here quite a bit, as you see Mr. Sims is here, he's here frequently, so they're presenting. Parks, Recreation, and Culture, of course, a lot. Planning is here a lot. But also we had finance talking about some things. We had human resources, of course we have lead services. I think we even had fire, and I believe we had the RCMP at one point. If not, we've had references to the RCMP and some of those RCMP issues. So it really is, did I miss any departments, sections? No, so you'll see that, and that's another thing we're really proud of, is really truly is an interdepartmental committee. And that's all I have on the terms of reference, unless there's any questions.
Any questions, committee members?
I do have one, so you
Hang on, I'm gonna go through.
Oh, sorry.
So we're gonna get to this after, but I'd ask you to raise your hand. I'm gonna keep a line of speakers, and then I will call for your name. Thanks. Okay, go ahead, Wendy. I know, Wendy.
You say you meet every 2 months. Do you meet during the summer?
So we're not gonna meet this until September now. Initially, this group wasn't gonna meet until July, but we thought, let's see if we can, and then it was end of June, and so, but to get everybody to actually, lead service work to find the right time, everybody could get together and kick it off. It ended up being this time, so I think originally we were gonna meet in July, and then 2 months after that. So we will have a 2 month break, and then back in September.
And that will be addressed later as well. Thank you, Wendy. Any other questions from the committee? Seeing none, I'm now going to turn it over to, who's there?
Tanya.
Where? Oh, Tanya?
Thank you. I'm just wondering about the day and the time. Is that sort of set in stone in terms of the start time?
Pretty well, yes.
Okay.
Unless there's major issues, but this is what's always worked in the past, because we have to look at our staff availability, council availability. Were you looking at a different time, and if so, what time? Just
to start a little bit earlier, but just because I have to go right from this meeting to a 6 o'clock meeting for education committee for the school district. But I can also, since we only meet every other month, I could also either come late to that meeting or just take that night off.
Well, we can discuss maybe a 3:30 start, but I'll do that under new business, okay? Thank you, Tanya. Okay, I don't see any other hand. Oh, Richard?
I didn't see this in the agenda, but Pride is actually happening this Sunday. And I was wondering as to what involvement the city of Nanaimo will have possibly in Pride, because it would be a great opportunity to possibly look for any representation from that community.
Committee's already full, and we already talked to the Pride Committee. Okay. And I talked to members from the Queer Committee, I talked to members from the Trans Committee, and nobody has time right now or wasn't interested. So That's why I did say if there's concerns, because I was up there raising the pride flag, and I talked to different members of the community and said, if you have issues or concerns, please send me an email. I will try and get you onto the next committee meeting and come forward with any issues or concerns. Even though we don't have representation on the committee, it doesn't mean we still can't deal with the issues and reach out to some of those people as experts to bring to this committee to talk to us. That's my viewpoint on that, you know, we can still be inclusive of everybody by doing that. Because now the committee is full. We had it out there for a long time, and our staff reached out. We actually had over 27 applicants, so there was a lot of applicants for it. So it wasn't through lack of trying as well. So, but I understand what you're saying. But the city is involved. Like we had the Pride Race flagging, the parade's coming up. Some council members, but we didn't get notified till a week ago about the date. So some of us have already got other commitments. So, but traditionally we've all marched in the parade.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Okay, I'm going to move forward now to Ms. Karen Robinson, our Deputy City Clerk, to talk about the orientation.
Okay. All right, so I would like to extend a big welcome to both the new and the returning committee members. And so for those that have served on the committee before or other committees, some of this material I'm covering it will be somewhat familiar to you. So the returning members, though, hopefully this will be a little bit of a refresher for you. A lot of the material that you have is in your agenda, which is why we provided the full agenda packages for you. So I'm just going to stick to the highlights. It's going to be about 15 minutes, but in the slides and in your package is an email address for Ledge Services and also our phone number. So if anybody has any questions afterwards and you go home and you think about something, by all means, feel free to reach out to us at any time. So. Why isn't it going to the next thing? I have to look at that little wording over there. So probably the first and most important thing to talk about is your role on the committee. And so while council is responsible for the overall policy direction of the organization, there is an incredible amount of work to be done. And so council relies heavily on its committee structure to provide guidance and recommendation in a number of areas. So, and serving on a committee is also a way for residents of the city to be involved in the decision-making processes. And as Richard outlined through the terms of reference, each of you were selected because you have an interest in providing that input into city plans and policies, bylaws, and infrastructure. And council is very much looking forward to your review and recommendations on some of these key initiatives that are coming forward. And your role is a lot more than just attending the meetings as well. You'll be providing very, very key guidance to council on matters related to the city as a whole. So with that responsibility, you'll need to be aware of what your committee is authorized to do and to try and seek consensus wherever possible. And the guidelines are also a great resource document, which is in your agenda package. And it will help you and assist you in navigating sort of the terms and conditions for employees. There are some key responsibilities to being an effective committee member, and first is to ensure that you're prepared for the meetings by reading the agendas. And this is respectful to your fellow colleagues at the table. It ensures the meetings run smoothly and assists with better decision making. And so if you are assigned to say a small task force or something to investigate a certain matter, we just ask that you complete those tasks because your participation ensures the success. We also ask that you contribute to the direction and work of the committee to the best of your ability, and also, again, to just be familiar with the committee guidelines. There are two key bylaws that the committee needs to be aware of that govern meeting processes and committee member conduct, and both of those, again, are included in your package. And the first one I'd like to talk about is the council procedure bylaw. It outlines the procedures for both council and committee meetings, and it includes things such as time and location of meetings, how notice is provided, the order of proceedings for agendas and minutes, process for voting, holding of electronic meetings, and debate and decorum. And committee meetings follow the same processes as council through the bylaw. However, there are very specific sections that relate to committees, and that you'll find on pages 22 to 24 in the bylaw. Procedures that are not outlined in the bylaw for both council and committee meetings would default to Robert's Rules of Order, and I'll talk about that in just a bit. Welcome, Dale. Section 43 to 45 in the bylaw outlines the purpose of committees and subcommittees, and they are formed to consider, report, and make recommendations on matters that have been referred to the committee by council. Throughout the course of your term, and as noted previously, you will be asked for input on various city plans, policies, and initiatives. And at times you'll be given presentations by staff, such as the one that you'll be seeing shortly with Ms. Brinkman on the city plan. And there will be staff reports with options and recommendations for the committee to debate and consider in the form of motions. If the motions are endorsed at this level, they are then forwarded to council for consideration. And this is because committees do not have any authority. Any direction to staff must also be done in the form of a motion and supported by council. In section 45.1, it outlines that council is also not bound to pass the committee's considerations or jurisdictional conflicts are an often problematic thing that can happen at committees, and so council can't always support them, but it is quite rare that council doesn't support the recommendations that come out of the committees. And the other is generally budgetary things. Sometimes it's just not able to be managed through the budget. Every committee also has a meeting schedule, which is the key date calendar that we talked about. And the meetings on average take place every 2 months on the Wednesday from 4 to 6. And council and committees always take the month of August off. It just gives everybody a summer break. This is your legislative services team, and we support council and city committees, and Sheila Dury up there in the top is our department director. I'm her deputy, and the three lovely ladies to the right do all things necessary to put meetings together, produce the agendas, and take minutes of the meeting. And so you've met Callista and Alyssa over there. And at any given time, you may receive invites or information from any one of us, and we are also all available to assist you with questions that you may have. And our contact information is also located on that slide for convenience. So a little bit about meetings. After council supports the key date calendar, which it has, invitations to the meetings are sent through Outlook as appointments that state the meeting location, date, and time. Also, cancellations will come through through Outlook as well. So if you are unable to attend a meeting, it is absolutely critical that you let us know in one of three ways. And one is you formally decline the meeting when you get the Outlook invite. The other, if it's easier, is just to simply phone us at Legislative Services or send us an email. And that helps us to ensure that we have quorum. And for this committee, that's 7 members. If we don't have 7 members, the meeting can't go forward. And it's kind of a shame if we can't, if that happens, where people show up and then we can't go forward with the meeting. We do try to do some follow-up to make sure that we do have that quorum, but it really helps us if you can just remember to give us a call or just to make sure you do that decline button. We also have provisions in our procedure bylaw that allow for you to attend remotely, and I know that that was successful last year. We had a number of people. It also helps too if you might be feeling a little bit under the weather, but you feel like you want to participate. It's a great way to still be in the meeting. Zoom links are sent through the invites, so it will give you all the instructions on how to participate. And that's when the agendas get circulated, you'll find that. In terms of meeting basics, the full agenda process takes about 2 weeks on average. And in preparation for the meeting, staff will submit items for inclusion to the staff liaison by 11 a.m., 10 days prior to the committee meeting. It's been Richard, but I think it's going to be Darcy in the future. She'll be taking over the torch. Reports are then prepared and the agenda is developed. And under Council's procedure bylaw, the agendas are to be circulated 3 business days prior to the meeting, so that will be the Friday before for these meetings. We do provide hard copies of the front pages for those who are in attendance, but we do not provide hard copies of the agendas for committees. This was an exception today because it contains, your orientation material. And while the agenda is set up ahead of time, when you read it, you may be tempted to want to bring up a late item last minute at the meeting. And submitting items after the agenda has been developed or circulated makes it difficult for the committee members to make informed decisions and for staff to be prepared. is they will not have, they just won't have that opportunity to prepare for it. So late items should really be reserved for emergent items only. You can always reach out to your committee chair when you have ideas. We can always get them on the next agenda. But a good example might be, there might be a grant application that comes out of the woodwork. Sometimes the province releases on their very, very tight timeline. And with us meeting only every couple of months, but we're aware of it, that's something that we would, yes, definitely want to consider and talk about at the meeting as a late item, because time is of the essence. And again, if you do have a specific topic you want to bring up, just reach out to Darcy or to your chair. When you do get your agenda, it's probably going to spark some interest and get your juices going, and there may be some excitement and wanting to share that with your fellow members, but please make sure that you save all your debate for the committee. We actually, under the community charter, prevents local governments from having debate outside of the actual committee. So please refrain from that. If there's an oopsie, then please don't hit reply to all with comments and getting things going. That's another thing that I've seen. So. All meetings are open to the public and are recorded and live streamed. So there may be the odd occasion where we might need to speak to something in a closed matter. In those cases, we have to meet the reasons set out in the community charter. And they typically, though, relate to personnel matters, land matters, or law enforcement matters. And I don't think we've ever had a closed meeting at this committee. It would be pretty rare if it were to happen. So just something to be aware of, though, that if that does come up, that we do have the ability to go to a closed meeting. So now at the meeting itself, if the meeting is scheduled to commence at 4, once quorum is reached, the meeting can proceed. And if you are participating by Zoom, this is really important. Please turn your camera on. This is how we know if you're in the meeting. This is how we can tell if you're going to be voting. If we can't see you, we don't know, and we will deem that you have left the meeting. So if you are on Zoom and you need to excuse yourself for a little bit, just please raise your hand either by waving, or there's your little hand button on your computer there, and just get the chair's attention and just let her know that you'll be stepping out. And then you can turn your camera off. And then that way, if we have a vote going on, we know that your vote is not part of that particular motion. And then when you return, you just simply turn on your camera, wave, catch the chair's attention, and then we'll know that you're back into the meeting. At the start of the meeting, the chair will ask for any late items, and as we talked about, we try and reserve those for only emergent. And once those items are introduced, or if there's a need to reorder the agenda, which there can be at times if we have consultants or something, we may want to move them to the front, then we would just simply have a motion to adopt the agenda as amended.
Just going to stop here. Is there any questions so far? Mr. Harlan?
Functionally speaking, when I'm looking at my computer, and if I'm on Zoom, my camera is right at the top of the monitor, and I have to bring my face close to the monitor to be able to see the screen. In moments where, say, like a presentation is happening or something, am I able to turn off the camera so then my forehead is not the only thing that's being visible?
Yes, but in that case, what I would do is just say, Richard here, I'm here, but I just don't have my camera on. And in presentations, you wouldn't be doing any voting at that point anyways. Yeah. But the important thing is just make sure you turn it on. Like if you know there's going to be a vote and somebody's making a motion, you want to be able to see your hand, and we'll watch for it as well.
Okay.
So. Thank you. Seeing no others, thank you, Ms. Robinson.
Okay. So on your agendas, you'll occasionally see a presentation section and a delegation section, and there is a difference. Presentations can be made by staff or individuals that have been invited by the committee, or for staff to present on a matter, and there's no time limit for presentations, although we do keep mindful that this is a 2-hour meeting. Some of them can be between 10 minutes to a half an hour for the most part. Delegations come when members of the public want to speak to a matter that's on the agenda. If it is on the agenda, they are provided 10 minutes to speak. If it's something where a member of the public wants to speak to the committee, but it's not on the agenda, but it would fall within your mandate, they would be provided 5 minutes to speak. And what often happens, delegations come typically with the intent of an ask of some sort. And so it's really, really important that you are free to ask questions of the delegation, but you don't want to enter a debate with them. And you don't want to be making motions directly after you've heard somebody. And you can look to your chair for direction on that, because quite often what we do is the topic really is probably worth looking at. And in those cases, we would want to refer that topic back to staff so that if there's any associated implications, whether it's money or staffing, that can be explored in the report and brought back, as opposed to just passing the motion right while you've got the whites of their eyes in the room. So it's just like, thank you very much. We'll look at considering having it referred to staff. So Robert's rules. These are used to facilitate the meeting, and these are rules and customs that govern the conduct of the meeting and assist in facilitating efficient meetings while at the same time protecting the rights of its members. Oh, there's a fly, and I keep thinking there's my little pointer there. So actions and directions can only be acted on through motions, which are passed by the majority of the committee. And this is done by a member introducing the main motion. So often staff recommendations and within reports with options are provided through their staff reports. So now when you've had a look at it and the staff member has introduced it, somebody would like to initiate the main motion, or it might be the staff recommendation, and say they would like to put it on the floor for discussion, and then it would need to be seconded in order for the debate to commence. If it doesn't get a seconder, the motion fails, and it also doesn't get recorded in the minutes. You also don't have to be in favor of a motion in order to bring it forward onto the table. And this is why we don't record movers and seconders, because people, members of the public, if they look at it and they see that you've moved something, they typically will think, well, you must have been supportive for it. When the intent is really just to get it on the floor to have the discussion. It really gets highlighted when you're in small task forces or small committees. I remember some years back, we had a very small planning committee that only consisted of 3 people. Well, 2 of the 3 have to make the motions to get it on the table to talk about it, even if they're not in favor of it. It could get voted down. So again, if you want to hear the discussion, even if you're not in favor, by all means, feel free to bring it forward. Secondary motions can also happen, and this happens while you're during the debate. You go, and I'll just look at an example. I make a motion that the city use all electric cars and that they're blue. Now you're having the debate, and through the debate, there's sort of a shift in thinking that you might want to have the city cars be green. And so what would happen is someone would make a motion to say, I'd like to amend the motion that the cars be green instead of blue. So then we fall into what's called a LIFO principle, which means last in, first out. So that means you would vote on the very first, or the last motion. So not a motion. So you would be voting on whether or not to have cars blue or green. And then if it passes that amendment and it says we want to be green, then you would go back and vote on the main motion as amended. So, and of course the chair and myself will be able to help you with any of those things. So don't hesitate to bring forward amendments if you think they're appropriate. Does anybody have any questions about motions generally? There's a few here that I just picked through. I mean, there's so many motions with Robert's rules, but they can be mind-boggling. And there's really just a few key ones here. There's approve, and that just means that the committee agrees to the request, recommendation, or policy, and a specific decision is made. There's a motion to refer, and this one is usually in order to gain additional information prior to the committee making a final decision. And the one to postpone is a little bit more immediate. It's to stop the debate on a matter until further conditions are satisfied, but there has to be parameters set on them. So like, I think we need to hold before we do anything further, and I'd like to make a motion to postpone this topic for 2 weeks until we can get a staff report to give us more information. That would be a perfect use of a postpone motion. Tie votes means that the motion gets defeated. Most committees have an odd number, so that generally doesn't happen, but there are times when a member is missing, you have an even number, and if it's tied, it does get defeated. There are some other provisions that we can explore later on for somebody who is absent from a meeting can bring it back, but we'll get into that stuff a little bit later on. Negative motions is a motion pitfall, but you'll generally not encounter those because we do our best at a staff level when we're looking at the recommendations to not have them come forward where it says that something not be issued, because you can get into double negatives. It's more appropriately to use the word deny, because it makes it especially awkward if you're voting down a negative motion. It gets really confusing. Did it really go through? So it's just something to be aware of. So if that sort of happens where we're formulating motions on the fly, myself as the corporate officer would be able to assist you with maybe a little bit of wordsmithing as we go along. A little bit on rules of decorum, and Councillor Armstrong might have a few comments as well, but not everyone may be in agreement with the motion, and this is where the healthy debate comes in. And members may have different perspectives or viewpoints, and this is actually really appreciated. This is where we get the opportunity to see everyone's point of view and, you know, see something from somebody else's eyes, and makes for good decision making. Having said that, remarks should be confined to the motions, and comments should be courteous at all times, and the remarks addressed through the chair. So all the motions or every conversation would go through Councillor Armstrong, and then responding to your fellow colleagues at the table.
Just want to add something on that. It's really important, if you feel that the whole table's sort of like leaning towards one way, still bring up your other viewpoint, because I know I myself, I've been, after hearing a new viewpoint, have actually changed my vote based on new information, because sometimes we're not thinking of that information. You might think that we know it, but we actually don't. So it's really important, if you feel strongly about something, don't be intimidated because you think 10 out of 11 are going to vote yes. It's really important to bring your opinion forward, because you all of a sudden might go now, oh, we all voted against it, we're going what you're thinking. So yeah, I really encourage that. And nobody should be taking anything personal. It's just, everybody's got different viewpoints, right?
Absolutely.
So it's important to make sure that you do bring it out.
And doing it through the chair in a safe environment where it's focused on the motion, not on personalities, that's the kind of healthy debate that you can get into. And Councillor Armstrong, as the chair, will have a speakers list. So if there's, you know, a real lively topic and 8 hands go up, then Councillor Armstrong will take a note and then take turns. And if after there's been a round table, you've heard something else that sparks your interest, by all means, there's opportunities to speak multiple times to the same topic.
And sometimes if it gets too far, and I'm going to say I'm going to restrict you to a new point. Because sometimes some people, it's not so much here, but it's when we're at public meetings and stuff, that people keep saying the same thing over and over and over again, which isn't helpful, right? We need new points when it's great for the first or two, but you don't want to be listening to somebody 5 times say the same thing. So if I find it's going off in that direction, and technically I think we're only supposed to allowed to speak 3 times in our procedural bylaw, but it doesn't get enforced that often. Thanks.
In terms of minutes, minutes of the meeting are governed under section 51 of the bylaw, and minutes are action driven here at the city through recommendations. They don't include the committee debate verbatim or items that aren't pertinent to the discussion. Having said that, you will find that the committee minutes have a little bit more detail, and that's to provide context. These are shirt sleeve sessions where there's, you know, we're formulating what's happening, and then we get to the decision, and then the decision goes to council. So sometimes you need that bit of context, but again, we put points down, we don't do the debate like he said, she said, this person said that. Draft minutes are circulated as soon as possible after the meeting, and then formally adopted at the next meeting. They also then go to council for information. So once they've been supported, they go off, and so council has an opportunity to see those motions. Just a few more slides. Reporting out is done by the chair or co-chair, and they are the spokesperson for this committee. And it can happen in a variety of ways. It could be through to the media, could be through formal reporting through to council, or through the staff liaisons, and then just the other informal ways through the minutes and the committee meeting summaries that you'll see from time to time. This is the second key bylaw that the committee should be aware of, and it's the Code of Conduct bylaw, which council adopted May 30th last year, but it wasn't put into effect until October 15th with the new council and committee members' terms. This is something that was made mandatory by the provincial government last year. There's 4 parts to the bylaw. Part 1 outlines the scope, and the scope of the bylaw is really, it's pertinent to council and committee members. Part 2 outlines sort of the overarching foundational principles for council and committee members to follow. And part 3 is the meat of it, where you get into the behavioral expectations connected to those principles. And they cover off things like your interactions with staff, volunteers, committee members, the public, and the media. And it also outlines how, you know, should there be a complaint raised, how it's handled and collected. And most of those provisions in part 4 are pertinent to council members only, because really council members are elected by the public, and you are brought to the table by council. So it would be council that would resolve any matters should something arise at the committee level. And again, this bylaw is in your package. If you have any questions, please don't hesitate to reach out. And on this slide here, this is a committee member's statement, and this is attached to the bylaw. So when council members get sworn in, they swear an oath in order to take office. And at the time, they are also agreeing during that oath that they will abide by the Code of Conduct bylaw. For committee members, they do not swear an oath, so they must sign a statement affirming that they will adhere to the bylaw. So we do have copies on hand here today if anybody was super keen and they read it and they understand it and are wanting to sign it today. We do have copies, but if not and you need some additional time, feel free to scan it and email it to Legislative Services just prior to the next meeting if you want to drop it off at City Hall. Conflict of interest, this is just something else that you should be aware of. Council, staff, and committee members are expected to make decisions that benefit the communities that are free from undue influence and not to act or appear to act in order to gain financial benefit for themselves, family members, friends, or business interests. So if you have a member of your family or yourself that might have a potential conflict of interest, you must let the chair know and just absent yourself for the discussion during that time. So it means you can't vote on it, you can't hear anything on it. You're just temporarily out of the room and then you're brought back in when that topic is over. I can say in all honesty that would rarely happen in this committee. It's primarily for land matters or financial matters, so the finance committees or some of the Board of Variance or something like that. That's where you would see it more commonplace. So I highly doubt it, but it's just still something that you should be aware of. So if you have that little niggling feeling, and the test that we always say is, would a reasonably well-informed individual think there was a conflict? And if you think so, chances are you might be in one. But again, those are probably rare. And you're certainly free to talk to the chair or myself if you ever encounter that situation. And that is it for me, unless anybody has any questions.
Any questions? Yeah, John?
When the quorum of 7, does that 7 include the chairman and the assistant chairman, vice chairman?
Yes. Total of 13.
I should announce too, I forgot to do that. Councillor Eastmere planned to be here today, but she's sick.
Right.
So she is the co-chair. And just what we normally do is I will chair the meetings for a year, then she will chair them for a year so that everybody gets exposure.
And typically the chairs will, their votes count, but more often than not, you will see the chairs allow all the committee members to have a fulsome debate, and then in closing, the chair will provide her thoughts, and then the vote will be taken on the motion.
Sometimes we had to start the discussion last time because people didn't really want to start it, so we would start it, Zenny or I, so. But I'm hoping you feel comfortable enough to start it, because this is what you're here for, is to give us the benefit of your experience and advice. Okay, and then you saw the key calendar date. It's June 7th, September 6th, and November 8th. It's included in your package. Okay, so I think, now I'm missing the next page, but I'm assuming it's a city plan.
The city plan is on page 82.
Yeah, well, I don't have anything else here. Mine just stops. My agenda stops.
It stops at page 82?
Yeah, it stops there. So I'm assuming this is the next, right?
Yes, that's it. Yeah, that's it.
Okay, so I'm going to introduce Ms. Brinkman. She's going to talk to us about the Nanaimo Reimagining. Ms. Brinkman.
Oh, absolutely. For the most there.
Can join you at the table here with the people. Nice to meet you. Nice to be here today. Thank you for volunteering. Let's see. If I move it forward, will it be city plan? Presentation? No? Do you know where?
I think you have to exit that one.
Yeah, exit that one
Go to the
first.
next one.
Okay. And exit again. Close that one out.
So I need a tech person.
Oh, no.
Do you want me to help?
Do you know where it is?
Probably.
It's just on oh, Natalie, yes.
Thank you.
Yay, thank you, Natalie.
No, I'm worried it's coming out.
Is it?
So maybe while Natalie's finding the presentation, just wondering, did you see the Reimagine flags in the city? Were you aware of the Reimagine process happening in the city of Nanaimo in the past 2-3 years? There was pretty distinctive branding and so that whole public consultation process was leading towards gaining everybody's input for the city plan, which I'm going to present today. So I hope you had that chance to participate and give your input. Yeah.
It's on.
So that whole process led to the plan being adopted by council in July 2022, so last year. So it's been almost a year that we've been working with it, and recently just won an award actually from the Planning Institute of BC, a gold award. So we're very proud of that. So little prelude, well, thank you. Yeah. So I'll just talk about city plan and a very high level presentation about city plan, and this plan is definitely very interdepartmental. We have folks from different departments, so feel free to chime in, and I may ask you to on some different things, and that includes communications too. So moving forward, there we go. So we have the Accessible British Columbia Act, and as part of that, cities are required to have the Accessibility Committee, so thank you, that's you. Another thing we're required to have is an accessibility plan. And the purpose of that plan is to identify, remove, and prevent barriers to individuals that interact with the city of Nanaimo. So this is language right from the Act. So the plan must consider inclusion, adaptability, diversity, collaboration, self-determination, and universal design. The plan must establish a process for receiving comments from the public on the plan, and the plan must be reviewed and updated every 3 years. So how the city has chosen to do that is with city plan. And so city plan replaced the old official community plan from 2008. And what it does is integrates many of the city's plans. So it's an official community plan focused on land use. It's our Parks, Recreation, Culture, and Wellness Plan. It's our Transportation Plan. It's Active Mobility Plan. It's our Climate Action and Resiliency Plan. And it's the Accessibility and Inclusion Plan. And so Nanaimo is a growing city. Over the next 25 years, we expect to have 40,000 new people. And so this plan is guiding how are we going to do that well. And from mobility, Parks and Rec perspective, a land use perspective, and accessibility and inclusion perspective as well, and all those things. So how the city plan document is framed, and the city plan is available on the city website, and we're working on making that more accessible, and we know we have more work to do on that, and that is a high priority for us. So I don't know if we could send a link to the Accessibility Committee where our city plan is located, something we can do. But how the document is structured is around, we call the Nanaimo framework and related to donut economics. And so what that was looking at is how can we live well within our planetary limitations and where everyone can thrive, our social limitations as well. And so 5 themes emerged from that: a green Nanaimo, a connected Nanaimo that's has equitable access and mobility, a healthy Nanaimo, and an empowered Nanaimo, with reconciliation, representation, inclusion, and a prosperous Nanaimo. So those are the 5 themes, sort of chapters in city plan. And you'll see under each of those 5 themes are topic areas, and we'll dig into those a little bit. But really, in each of these topic areas, equity and inclusion is important. However, you'll see that it's in the empowered section that we're really sort of meeting a lot of the Accessibility Act requirements, BC Accessibility Act requirements. So for example, in the equitable access and mobility section of city plan, we talk about connected communities, recreation trails, how they can be accessible, complete streets and how they can be accessible. And then in the community well-being and livability section, we talk about policies related to affordable housing, intergenerational living. And for example, a policy in here is increasing our adaptable units in the city. And so on June 12th, actually, there's a staff report with proposals to council about ways we can increase the number of adaptable units in the city. Something to look for. So we're already taking action on some of the policies in city plan now that it's being in place. But as I mentioned, it's really the Empowered Nanaimo section of city plan where we talk about equity, inclusivity, access for all, and political voice and engagement, and really meeting the Accessibility Act pieces. I'm going to skip over that one. So in equity and inclusivity, those 3 sections are about 7 pages in city plan. If you'd like to take a look around page 101 to 107. And so the policies in equity and inclusivity are an inclusive Nanaimo that provides opportunities for active involvement and prosperity for all members. Environments and spaces across all areas of the city that are diverse and vibrant for the enjoyment of all residents. Celebration of diverse cultures in a community that is welcoming, inclusive, and accepting of all cultures. Equitable access to services, programs, and facilities for all residents. Continued city leadership in applying an equity, gender, diversity, and inclusion lens in city initiatives and decision-making. And I do want to add, for these 3 sections of city plan, the ACAI Accessibility Committee from before really helped us form a lot of these policies and form part of city plan. So just thank you to that and acknowledgement there. So the Access for All section has policies related to the city is committed to improving accessibility for all by identifying, removing, and preventing barriers that limit access to services, amenities, and public life, and to ensure there are many ways for people of all ages and abilities to move freely throughout the city and without barriers, and to ensure people of all ages, genders, abilities, and income levels have easy access to services and spaces without barriers. So these are high-level policies that are kind of the vision for how we move forward as a city. And then the 3rd section, political voice and engagement. So an informed and aware community that can meaningfully participate in city processes and shape city decisions. Opportunities for all people to express their voice on community matters important to them. City leadership is actively listening to the diverse voices in the community. And space for representation that reflects the diverse population of Nanaimo so that decision-making, planning, policy development, and creation of procedures considers a broad range of perspectives that are representative of community diversity. So those are the high-level policies. And as I said, we are already taking action on some of on that throughout the city in different ways. And so here's maybe where I'll call on Mr. Harding and Mr. Sims. I have 2 slides of some images of projects that are already taking place in the city that maybe you want to.
Well, yeah, actually, this one's the inclusive playground in Vail. The committee was heavily involved with that. They reviewed final parts of phase 1, but completely reviewed phase 2 and the implementation of phase 2. I think we're the first to get on site and actually use it. The committee was when we're finishing it, as well as the Moby mat was. I can't remember if it was. I don't remember if you tried it out or it was.
I think that's Akasha.
Jocelyn was there to try it out. So and we put the Moby mat in as a trial last year down at Parcher Bay, and we've got now one at Finn Beach and back at Parcher Bay, and we're try some others this year. So those kinds of things where we can quickly do an improvement. and washroom at Neck Point Park not as much. But as Ms. Brinkman mentioned, the city plan was a huge part of it. But also, one of the big things the committee did last time was update our LEAP program, so economic access. And we have some next phases to go through that we want to make sure we check with this committee too as we go through the next phases. And it's the new plan is starting to work. We're getting a lot more youth already back into the plan, which was the goal. And Mrs. Laura or Darcy will come back and do an update on that in the next little while. But a number of different plans, both policy, that's a policy one, but then also plans. And now we're going to go into phase 2 of the Westwood Lake improvement, and that is the full inclusive of washroom. So the parking phase was just completed, or was just at the end of being completed, and now we're then sent out our RP for the architects to help us now with the phase we really were wanting. Well, we want both of them, but we couldn't do both at the same time. And that's the beachfront with a new washroom and some accessible trails and better access to the water itself. So there's a number, and Mr. Sims can go through a bunch also.
There was on the previous slide, you saw the crews repainting the Pride crosswalk at Commercial and Bastion. So that was done just a few weeks ago in preparation for Pride Month. But that intersection is actually going to be rebuilt starting later this fall, which means that the old Ripley bricks will be gone, and the sort of repainting on a frequent basis will be no longer. The Commercial is being sort of redesigned, updated to a much more a level cross section, so it'll be much more pedestrian and roller friendly. And the Pride crosswalk is going to transform into quite a large graphic that extends across the intersection for quite a way. So it'll be really quite striking. And I think on the next slide, there's a few images. You probably heard a little bit about Metro Drive. It's a noisy project, but it's been a really well received by a lot of folks in the community. We're getting an awful lot more cyclists and pedestrians out and to the, especially to places like Pleasant Valley School. But one of the features that is in the image is a tactile warning strip, and so all over the city as we can, with significant additional funding from council, we've actually been installing these tactile warning strips, which helps with visually impaired, but it's also very bright too. Bridget, can you confirm that they're working?
I love them.
Okay, good.
I love them so much.
Wonderful to hear. The other thing that we've been doing is, it's kind of obvious when you see it, but I think the committee was heavily involved in this sort of wave action that you can do to trigger crosswalk signals instead of trying to punch a button on the side of a pole, which might be in an awkward location. So we've got these buttons. I'm sorry, something about wave. You can just wave at the thing and it triggers the crosswalk. So that's, again, council's increased quite a bit of funding for pedestrian accessibility, which, we're making all of the intersections as accessible as possible, and transit stops as well.
I see Jocelyn, you had your hand up briefly.
That was just an applause. Way to go.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
Good, thank you. So in addition to that, into the city plan is an integrated action plan and monitoring strategy. So the integrated action plan is a library. It's of actions the city can do to implement city plan. The city plan is a policy, sort of broad vision policy, and so council was like, how are we going to do this? What are the actions? How are we going to implement all of this? And so that can be found in an integrated action plan, which there is a draft on the city's website as well for that. And council has been going through that the past few meetings, and we'll be considering endorsement of that document later in June, I think June 26th possibly. And then lastly is the monitoring strategy. So keeping track of, are we being successful with city plan? Are we achieving what we need to achieve? And what are those targets? how are we going to, demonstrate that, and what changes do we need to make to investment or in order to achieve city plan policy. So we'll be monitoring that, and a monitoring strategy will be coming forward this year as well. Chika, any questions about city plans? Sort of very high level presentation of an intensive process.
Mr. Harding.
I was just going to add to the committee for as Ms. Brinkman has mentioned, the integrated action plan. So once council adopts those, council may ask the committee for some thoughts about the priorities of those as they relate to accessibility and inclusiveness or otherwise. But so again, there's an attempt to bring city plan to life, to actually, as Ms. Brickman mentioned, to actually break it down by year, 5-year, 10-year increments with some specific, tangible, doable projects.
Just to add to that, I'm going to use an example Richard gave us last year, and that was about branches coming down to where we weren't cutting them high enough. Like you said, it's great as a sight impaired person. He's got his cane, right, which finds things on the bottom, but not about his head. So as a result of those comments, none of us really had thought about that. And Parks and Recs immediately started doing the trimmings at a higher level. So this is where, like, it sounds like it's something small, but it means something big for somebody. So that's why every little idea that you think about is really important for us to hear about, because we may not think about it. And sometimes they're really easy to implement because that doesn't cost any more money. There's no budget implications. It just means we go up a foot or 2 feet higher. So really important to hear that kind of stuff. Just like hearing about the tactile strips. When we're hearing that it's really successful, it's a lot easier for Mr. Sims to come to council and say this committee endorses it and they really believe in it. And that just lends more weight to a council decision. Thanks. Okay, any other questions? Linda?
I'm really impressed. I was on the first committee and had to step down due to illness. But I'm really impressed with all the changes made in the city in a really short period of time. And it's really gratifying. The other thing I wanted to add is the wave crosswalk things are lovely, but they're not cane detectable. So I think of Richard every time I come up to one, because if he walks into one, it would be right in his stomach.
Right.
So if they had a bar or something a bit lower, then his cane, or any blind person's cane, would detect them. So
great kind of input. That's exactly what we're looking for, right? Because we don't think about some of those things. So great. Now, Bea, I saw you got it in your hand.
Yeah, I just had a question about the Westwood Lake upgrades. Are you going to make transit more accessible for that location?
Just to talk about that, transit does not belong to the city, it belongs to the regional district.
Okay.
And right now, we saw a bunch of hours that we were supposed to get scaled back. Transit's in trouble to a degree, like the budgets and stuff. So that is something, if there's a recommendation that comes from this committee, I can take that to the RDN. So, but transit is actually handled by the RDN, but Mr. Harding and then.
Yeah, so what we did, because Councillor Armstrong's correct, we have no control over it. We did advise transit that we were doing the improvements, and so our turning radiuses and things are set so pretty good sized buses can go through there. It might be the smaller buses. Definitely we're hoping the anti-dart buses will get up there a lot more because they've added a lot more accessible parking and drop off. But we did talk to transit about it. They kind of go just below Westwood right now, up to Arbor Road. But they're aware of our improvements and we hope that they'll look at the access.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Harlow.
I wanted to respond to the comment that Linda made.
Yeah.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe all the touchless sensors have a auditory clicking sound that is emitted every few seconds, and that's what allows us to be able to navigate to where it is even if we can't see it. But I could be mistaken, it could just be on a couple.
Yeah, I think you're right, Richard.
Okay.
Thanks for that. I think that's a good point.
Cool.
I will confirm that whether they're on all of them or not.
Cool.
Okay, we're gonna move on to new business now as I don't see anything. So I did send an email was sent to me by Elaine Lawson, who used to be on our committee, and she was hearing impaired. So I don't know if people got a chance to look at it or not. And just wondering if there's something that we would like to discuss further, or if there's a recommendation from this committee that the city asked for, or that this committee asked for a report from staff as to what is the feasibility and cost for something like this at our Parks and Recs.
Can you confirm which page?
91.
91, sorry.
Yeah.
Karen's got to put me in line of that, because I'm on my East Drive, which is a totally different number. So basically what it is, if you haven't had a chance to read about it, it's a way where there's an automatic speech to text app where they can use Google Live. So it really helps people that are hearing impaired be able to get their points across, hear things. Right now it's only working on Android devices, but Apple is now working on something similar. So it's something we thought about because she said that she's heard from people in the hearing impaired community that they sometimes do struggle when they go to some of our Parks and Recs places because they can't hear. So that's why I wanted to include this in, because I thought it was important that you hear from her as a previous committee member about something that she just saw. So this can be bringing back, we can bring this back at a later date because it's just, I just wanted to get a lot of this stuff out today because normally I don't put in late items, but this one was not that late, I got it in sooner, but just for, information maybe at this time, and then if people want to bring it back at a later date, great, or if you think it's viable now, we can look at having a motion. So I'm gonna open up for conversation if anybody's had a chance to read it or any thoughts. Linda?
Can I just ask, is this so people can hear anywhere in the park? Or like say when you're purchasing a ticket to the pool or something?
I believe that's where it's more for. It's like when you're going up to the desks and stuff, and I think what happened too is a lot of times now we've got the dividers, right, for safety and stuff, so that sometimes hearing is muffled, and not everybody can read lips. So this was something that she brought forward, so like for me, my recommendation is if we're interested would be to ask for a staff report, but I just threw it out. Follow up?
There is a device, it's a countertop hearing induction light, and it sits behind glass. And it picks up the voice of the person selling the tickets or whatever and projects it directly to hearing aids. Or you can have speakers set into the glass that are two-way so that the people behind the glass can hear as well as people in front of the glass. And it can also project right to hearing aids. And they're not super expensive.
So maybe a motion could be that we'd be looking at options to help improve hearing for those that are hearing impaired at city things or something like that.
I'll move that.
Okay. Well, I'll come back to that. Wendy?
So one of the things I was thinking, you were talking about hearing aids, not everyone who is deaf has hearing aids.
Yeah.
That's why you're seeing now why it's really important that we get a staff report. Just don't say I make a motion to do this, because there's so many different options that we're now hearing about at the table, which gives our staff a chance to come back and say, you know what, we found something that's better, but if we've already made the motion and like to do this particular thing, then we have to revisit the motion, take it back. So that's why you'll find I'm a very big fan of getting staff reports on just about everything. There's a few times it's not needed, but yeah, great, thanks. Richard?
So this device specifically provides audio enhancement, essentially?
That's my understanding. I really don't know, Richard.
Not
I just wanted to throw it out so that we could talk about what we're hearing from people in the hearing impaired, so that this committee could say exactly what I personally like to see as a report from staff, saying what are some of the options we can look at to help those people that are hearing impaired at city facilities.
I think it would be really valuable to reach out. There's a couple of community groups that provide hearing aids to people with hearing impairments and such. They would probably be very beneficial to speak to in regards to the technology side of things, to see what would be most compatible.
Yeah, and that's where the staff would be able to, like a report would be very helpful. Wendy?
Like the Island Deaf and Hard of Hearing,
Yeah.
they have done a lot with people who are deaf.
Okay, I'm gonna come back to Linda for a motion then.
I've got one drafted.
Okay,
Want to hear
do you
it?
want to hear the motion drafted?
Just see if I've captured it. So this would be the committee recommending to council to direct staff. So it's that the committee recommend that council direct staff to prepare a report on the feasibility of audio enhancement options to assist hearing impaired individuals at city facilities. Does that make sense?
Possible amendment.
Sure. I'm just crafting this on the fly, so any help that,
Audio enhancement and transcribe.
and
It's like
transcription.
closed caption.
And closed caption,
Yeah,
okay.
because
How would that work, because this is this is.
Well, some of our places do have, like at the pool, there is TVs above, so that maybe you could have, there might be a way that they could link. That would be something that the report could look at,
Yeah.
and they come back that
Okay.
it's not feasible, but I understand what he's saying, that, you know, because we went in this room for a long time without closed captioning, right?
Yeah.
And I think then that would capture what I think Richard's trying to say, there's certain places where we don't have closed captioning, is there a possibility to put it in there?
So if we went audio enhancement and closed caption, or
Closed captioning possibilities or
options
transcription?
to assist hearing and visually impaired individuals.
John?
Just a point of order on this, isn't this rather contrary to what you said earlier in the meeting? All of a sudden, we're to a page that I've never seen before. It's printed, I don't think they could have printed it any smaller. It's a subject that we really don't know anything about, have no idea, and all of a sudden there's motions on the floor?
But this was sent out and it got to the table, so we already had the opportunity to look at it.
I never did.
Well, it was included in
It
the
was in
package.
your agenda package.
Yeah. So, yeah, so the point is, what we're voting on is getting the report, we're not voting on doing it. And that's why we said that we always prefer that you ask for a staff report. Then when that staff report comes forward, then you're gonna have all the information to have the discussion. Because right now, we're not voting on doing this, we're just voting on getting a report to bring back to the table. And then there'll be discussion.
like fact finding.
It's like a fact find, yeah, exactly, a fact finding mission. This is how most of these will go. When it's already an agenda item, that's the appropriate time to make motions. It's when it's something new. Like I have a new late item, which wouldn't be, but I wanted to put it in, you know, we discussed it later date, but. Because this is actually part of our agenda, under new business.
So did you not get your agenda sent to you previously? Yeah, it would have been sent electronically to you. And it would have been in that full agenda package. That was a supplementary agenda item. Yeah, so the original one, and it would have appeared on page 91 in the package that was sent to you.
Oh, it was in that package that huge package?
Yeah.
And I was supposed to read that 140 pages, so.
Now at the end, we get 3,000 pages we have to read.
Well, it was hidden in there if it was there. Because I did go through it.
Okay, yeah, just maybe that might be a good opportunity to point out that the topics will be under each of the front pages, and then it will point to the page numbers for you to be able to find those topics.
But you're right, it was very small, text.
Small text, yeah.
That's because that's how it came to me, I just forwarded it.
We should enlarge it.
Yeah, so that's a good point to make it bigger next time. So did you want to make a vote on that?
So this should be a case.
Linda, are you okay with that motion as she read it out?
Do you want to repeat it?
Okay.
Just a sec, John.
Oh, it's not really, but going back to the, now a lot of times computers have problems. I'm on Apple and sometimes it doesn't behave the same. When it came, I could not print it, I had to photograph it. And then I've had other things that came in the same period that would just disappear.
That's weird, because I use Apple products, so we use
Yeah.
Apple products, yeah.
So, just a question to Calista, when it gets sent, or Alyssa, sorry about that. It gets sent and there's a little PDF, like there's markers for each topic, right, when it gets sent out?
Well, no, not the
No, there's
PDF.
not.
If you were
There's
to
just
view
one-
the HTML version of it on the
Okay.
website, you can click on each one,
Okay,
but not the PDF.
okay, so that's another way to view it as well as on the city's website. And we can provide a link to you if that's more helpful.
If I don't know what I'm looking for, what is, you know.
So in this particular case, it says number 8, other business, And then A's is correspondence. So that's where you would find that, and that the correspondence was the email that I got, asking for it to
I can pull it up on there and show.
be put on.
So it would have been page 91 here.
I found it in there, yeah,
Okay,
but I didn't have that at the time.
okay,
Like I say, it's very small, I have trouble reading it.
okay. So the purpose of putting that on there was for information for the committee to decide to see if this is something that we wanted to explore further. Linda's made the motion that yes, it is. And I need a seconder. Oh, seconded by Nicole. Now we'll move to discussion. Is there any further discussion on this topic? Linda?
If city staff would like to, there's a company in Victoria called Assistive Listening. Tim Archer owns it. He's spent his life making IMAX films, and his kind of give back business is hearing, assisting people with hearing issues. So he came up with a solution for all of BC ferries, Vancouver, the credit union in Vancouver. So there's a huge number of ways to help people hear. And from what I'm understanding, right now there's a T-coil versus Bluetooth kind of newer, so we really do need the information.
Yeah, perfect. So seeing no further discussion, all in favor of a staff report on this? Any opposed? Seeing none opposed, motion carries. Okay, we're moving on to correspondence. Now this, I wanted people to see this because it was sent to me. It's a late item that was just sent to me. No, this is.
No, you're on Spark.
I'm on Spark, yeah. Yeah, just for people to realize what's out here, so that if you are interested in joining these, you can go yourself on them. So it's just a way for you to realize that there's webinars and to see what grants are available if you're interested, because I know some people are representing other agencies like Child Family, Community Living, so this may be something that your agency may be interested in, so. It's just, this is just reported for info only, no need for anything else. Because not everybody gets some of these grant opportunities. Okay, now I'm on C. This one just got sent to me yesterday, I think, yeah. And I have to do a response, but I told them I was bringing it to this committee first, so this I want to discuss at the next meeting. So this is just put forward in this particular case just for information so that you can see what the federal departments are doing and what the Senate is doing. I think this is really important information. I have to send it out to council. Well, actually council got it, but I think it's really important that we look at this and see what we think about it. Again, it's probably going to require a staff report if you feel it needs to move forward. But I just wanted people to have that information, and I would like it on the agenda for the next meeting. So there's nothing need to be done, but I just think that it's important, again, that you're aware of anything that's coming to our council regarding accessibility or diversity, so that you're getting the same information. And if there's something that, if people are interested in taking something from one of these areas, please let us know via email to Legislative Services or myself, and then I can forward it. So again, this is only for information at this time because it just got put on the agenda yesterday. I want people to have a chance to really look at this because there's a lot of information. So it gives you really a good chance to dig in to see if there's something that you think the city can do, or, and again, I'm also using it for your other organizations that many people are associated to. Future meeting items, Mr. Hardy.
All right, so this is a little bit of an opportunity for the committee to kind of go around the table, I believe, and kind of think where, is there some things you'd like us to come back and speak on? Sometimes we'll come back and we'll redo, like for example, today we did city plan. So we thought that was an important one for you to, a high level official community plan for you to see. But then are there some specific things you'd like us to come back and talk on? We, as staff, will have a number of items ready for the fall. We did receive, for example, Rick Hansen Foundation grant this past year to get 3 of our facilities completely audited by the Rick Hansen Foundation. And then with that came some funding, about $80,000. And with that, we'll come and just present the findings of those 3 reports or assessments and some priorities that they think we should be working on. As well as the last committee, we did a complete audit of Devon Pool. And there was the committee had some of the objectives there, and the committee participated in that. But again, this is, again, a chance for, if there's some specific things you want us to bring back, to either assist the group, or some specific options or topics you'd like us to address.
Wendy?
I like to talk, Braille. When you go into the washrooms at I think it's the aquatic center, the doors are always open and the Braille is on the door. So you can't, and the washrooms down in the park, there's no Braille on there. And I also have a friend who is visually impaired, and he has walked into the wrong one. Not that he could see anything, but.
So do you want to look at it as a topic for future discussion on how Braille and how and where Braille is used in the city? Would that make sense, Richard?
I would love to take part in that sort of dialogue.
Yeah, so we could come back and give you kind of state of the nation of where we're at.
So we can look at that as a topic. Thank you for that. I see, hang on, I can't see, I gotta look this way. Tammy, that's what I thought.
I'm very curious to see the Rick Hansen Foundation report, and particularly the Nanaimo Aquatic Center accessible change room area. If that is going to be on a future topic, I guess.
Mr. Harding?
Yeah, so that was one of the facilities we had a complete audit. So the three we had done was the aquatic center, which has been done before, but this one I think was done quite in depth. We also had, I think, was it Bowen Social Center? And Frank Crane Arena. So just kind of, and then we did have another audit done of Devon Pool, but yes, the aquatic center was part of that, and we can bring the findings and priorities or recommendations of that audit up for the next meeting.
Okay.
So we'll have down Rick Hansen reports. Will that work as a topic?
Rick Hansen Foundation report.
Rick Hansen reports, okay.
And I'm accessible change rooms.
That would be part of that. Yeah. Nicole?
I'm wondering if there is policy and procedures already in place at recreational facilities for the turning on and the unlocking of the built accessible features, and related a feedback process for community members who find them locked or turned off when they go to use them. For example, the doors, I always test them as I walk in, and sometimes they're turned off, and sometimes I can reach them to turn on, but most of the time I'm short, I can't. And I don't need them, but I know that I find bathrooms, especially the Nanaimo Ice Center, Frank Crane, like there's beautiful buttons on the bathrooms, for example, in Frank Crane, but sometimes they're not turned on. And then I found an accessible washroom locked. So these aren't budget items, but I'm wondering if there's like policy and procedures around the operations of those.
So do you want to look at doing an update for that, Richard, or do you want to discuss that now?
No, I think those are good ones because we can probably pull a lot of that together, particularly say for the Frank Crane. And some of the things you see locked is, given some of the social disorder we're dealing with, we've unfortunately had to, we're really struggling even to keep our outdoor washrooms open. Because as soon as we open, we get them totally burnt down, trashed. So we're having some security issues with that. And we'll bring back some of those ideas that we're trying to do to keep our washrooms open and accessible, but at the same time. So
this was one in the arena.
Yeah, that's one of the reasons we had to close it.
They're in there.
Yeah.
So I don't know how we or if there's a way so that the person who needs it has a way to contact.
Yeah, so we can update on that, how we do, how they get to a clerk or an attendant.
An attendant, yeah.
So let's do this update on policies and procedures for accessibility to city facilities, I guess.
Non-accessible.
Yeah. Linda?
I think we can roll that all, Chair, into that, bring back on those three.
You do what you think is best.
I'm just wondering, Nicole, did you mean that if there's a power door opener, sometimes you can reach up and flick it on? So it might not be that the washrooms are locked, it's that the power door opener has been
Yes.
turned off. So able-bodied people can get in. So it's not when they're locked for security, it's that able-bodied people can get in, but someone's just reached up and turned the door opener off.
But I know we've also, sorry Chair, but we've also had to
Definitely
actually lock them.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah, there's both
Yeah,
issues.
there's both issues,
Yeah.
yeah, we can explain both.
Another thing that I was thinking of, and we just had a presentation at council from, I can't remember if it's Rocky Point or Vista on, they want to build an accessible playground. If they may want to come to this table to do their presentation so they can get input from the table. I don't know what you think about that, or if, how they're working that, I'm not sure.
Yeah, we have a lot of playground projects going forward. What we're trying to do on the playgrounds is we have 4, we call our super playgrounds. Nefeo, Alder Woods, Bevan Park, and Harrowwood Centennial. We're trying to work to make those as accessible as we can, but where possible, we'll make our neighborhood ones accessible, but it is, to make them truly accessible, it is.
But this is a community initiative through
Yeah.
community fundraising, so I just thought this might be a table that they might want to come to share their plan, to see if there's stuff that's picked up, well, you should maybe look at this, look at that, like exactly with Maffeo. Just put that out to the community partners so that they know that this committee exists as well. Richard?
One thing that I'm wanting to see about addressing is navigation of our streets and navigation of our indoor spaces for people that are blind or low vision. I've been hearing some reports from people in the community that are vision impaired that have some struggles when walking down certain streets, either due to obstacles in the way, like telephone poles or sudden bends or sudden curve cut ends, or just an unevenness as well as navigating the indoor spaces. And I've seen some possible solutions coming out of Vancouver in regards to this. For instance, Vancouver Transit Link is having a pilot project with NaviLens where they embed these special QR codes that can be detected with a cell phone and then relay information that would be accessible to someone with blind or low vision to better understand the space.
So let's put that down as a topic, then navigation of indoor and streets. And if you happen to know which streets or areas, I would appreciate if you could send a link to me and then I can, or direct to Mr. Sims. So that, because it's a lot easier, because sometimes I know that there's a time where they can't move, they always try to move the telephone poles if they can, sometimes they can, sometimes they can't. But sometimes we may not be aware of which area, and it might be a simple fix, or it might be one, you know what, we can't. But maybe there's a way we can notify people, like on a list, like you said, you know, a QR list that there's gonna be coming up or something, or an interactive city map even or something like that. But I think that's a great idea.
Yeah.
Okay. Wendy?
On that subject, it's not just people who are visually impaired. Some of the places wheelchairs cannot go through. And there's one parking lot, if I'm allowed to talk specifically.
Sure.
Where the A and B sound place is, and there's a telephone pole as you're going past, and when cars reverse into it, like there's this much space. So I don't know if you can deal with that, like it needs to be either just driving into it.
Is that a private parking lot?
Might be either a private.
Yeah, or whether they can move, who would I go to?
That's Modi, Minister of Transportation and Infrastructure, it's the province, we have nothing to do with those roads.
Okay,
Yeah.
yeah, cause it's just,
Yeah.
can't get through.
But there might be an option, because we are doing some work on terminal with, and Modi's involved, that now that Mr. Sim's aware of it, if there's a solution, I'm sure he will.
Yeah, all they need to do is move the concrete barrier.
Yeah, but sometimes they won't because of the road issues.
Yeah.
But yeah, okay. I'm gonna go down to Bay.
I wanted to talk about the crosswalk time lengths. They vary, but some intersections you have to really hustle to get across them in time. And if you're walking with a cane, or you're just, you know, it takes a little more time, it's utterly anxiety provoking to have vehicles who are turning through that intersection just edging towards you as you try to limp across in time.
Yeah,
Mike, I don't know who handles
no, that's
the-
great, Mr. Sims is making note of all of this, and I do know that's part of the things that they're doing on their new road designs, where they're doing the curve out, so that you can't make that hard pass right, that, you know, every new road is getting updated, and that's why it's important that this committee brings forward this stuff, because these recommendations have been taken by staff and put forward in some of the new road designs. So that's a great point. I think I saw Nicole.
I guess it's more general to a few of these things, is like, is there a formal feedback process where a person who encounters a barrier can submit that barrier to the city? And do we receive that here at this committee?
So Cheryl, one thing I'll mention, one of the requirements that we have yet to meet is having a feedback tool on the city website for accessibility. It was one of the 3 requirements through the Accessibility Act. So that's something that I'm going to be looking at setting up an online form, and then we'll be publishing that out. We have until September to have that in place, so it's something that we're looking at over the next month.
Perhaps if you guys have ideas on that, we can send them out to, can you include Natalie's email in that so that she can get it? Because that might help her with a lot of time and research if you have ideas on how it should go in, where, and whatever, so that she understands it better. I really appreciate that. And we'll get her email out. Mr. Sims?
Thanks, Chair. I would say that we do have a reported transportation problem link
Public
on the
works,
website, so
yeah.
that this is the ideal place to.
Reported transportation problem?
Yes. On the-
Which includes walking, that's in public works, you can send stuff to public works, like potholes or sidewalk crosswalks not working, or that's always been there, but people don't know that, so I think that the point is really well taken, that where do we do that, like, and I think they're gonna relook at our whole city website too, right? Because we do hear concerns about that, and when that happens, I'm sure that is something that this committee is gonna really wanna look at from an accessibility and diversity lens. I think that's really important. But it's really important that you get your ideas out now, sooner than later. Vaya, follow-up?
I wanted to talk about snow on sidewalks.
Oh, yes.
I know, nobody wants to, but,
I do.
it really makes it impossible for people to access services. I've had to like accommodate an elderly man across what is that street called, behind Brooks Landing?
Yeah.
And help him climb through a mountain of snow.
Yeah.
So he could go get groceries.
Well, we're very, very aware of that, and we're doing everything we possibly can, like fines don't seem to work, and I mean, we're no different than any other city, and unfortunately, our snow budget is very small compared to where it needs to be to get up to that. It would cost millions to do it. I don't know if you're aware, Calgary, they don't even plow the side roads anymore. They only plow the main roads or a bus road. It's becoming like that across Canada, because it's prohibitively expensive.
Yeah.
Yeah. Richard, and then John?
I'm sorry.
I'm gonna come back to you.
Thank you.
John?
Just on the snow, one problem I have, Uplands Drive, along behind the shopping center and everything else, the snow had been gone for almost 2 weeks, and yet the slope down at the intersections for carts and that still had snow on it. I couldn't get off the sidewalk. And that was 2 weeks after most of the snow was gone.
Yeah, because they pile it. And then
They pile it right on the corner.
Or onto the bus stops.
Yeah, so these are things that we're very aware of, and Mr. Sims and his crew have been trying really hard. They're trying like to get the plow drivers to lift up the thing so that they're not going back onto the sidewalks, because that's a complaint we get quite often. You clear your sidewalk, then the plow comes along and sprays it. So it's something that's constantly being looked at by Public Works. So we are very aware of it, and
It's a real problem. for
yeah,
sure.
it is. Yeah. Richard?
Yes, I remember now. To address the issue of not having a submit form right now, is there any possibility of just changing the headline or the tagline of the submission form from transportation problems submission form to transportation and accessibility access form? That way we can have something until September?
Absolutely. I don't see a problem with that for sure.
It won't take until September,
Yeah.
that's just the mandated date.
Of course.
Yes.
Okay, I see Jocelyn, and then it'll be Tanya. Jocelyn?
It was neat to hear that so many things that I mentioned my first term had came up and we dealt with in the last term, which was really heartening, especially Westwood Lake washroom. So thank you for that. I'm really passionate about Westwood Lake as well, and I would love to see the trail made a little more inclusive, or a bypass, so that people using wheeled mobility could do the full circle of the trail. An overall look at trailheads within the city. Some of them are older and have the double D barriers or rocks, boulders, I gather, to force people to dismount before they cross streets, but they really do prevent larger strollers and adaptive bikes from getting through, or at least mine. Something I'm really passionate about is creative ways to get toward more accessible housing. And I realize the city has fairly limited leverage and influence on some of those things, but whatever way that could be done, whether there are some creative ideas, whether they're meeting with developers, I don't know, but there's so little, and so much of it is affected by that social disorder that was mentioned, so people don't feel safe in what is accessible. So
I think we should add that as a topic for future discussion, accessibility housing. I think that would be a good one. We could, maybe get somebody from social planning in, as well as, like you said, maybe like hear what their issues are, and then see if there's something that we can do to make recommendations to developers or to council to make it, there's certain things we try and do, like through use of DCCs or reduced stuff if they do certain things for us. So there are recommendations that possibly we can do, possibly we can't, but we won't know unless we hear what the recommendations are, and then we can look, does the province allow us to do this or not allow us to do this, or is it already being done? So I think that would be a really good topic, Jocelyn, so thank you.
can I make a suggestion on that note? Just talk to the Vancouver Resources Society, which has done some amazing work in partnering between cities and developers to leverage like a crazy amount of accessible housing, and for community living groups and other organizations. I think they have a lot to contribute.
We actually have, I think, something coming up on the GPC soon on that, so I'll make sure that that gets brought up, that the committee, although it hasn't probably made a recommendation yet, that it is a concern that we will be looking at.
Awesome, thanks.
Tanya? You're muted, Tanya.
Thank you. I couldn't find the unmute button. Sorry about that. What I was going to say is, and first of all, a lot of my thoughts have been voiced already. I think the two biggest concerns that crop up for me are around transportation for people, like for myself in a wheelchair. When my car's not working, between Handy Dart, there isn't enough busing that's available. Handy Dart is not available often enough for somebody who lives a busy life, and accessing the bus is something that I've seen myself included, seen a lot of people struggle with, is accessing accessible busing. That's the first thing. And I have no idea what the city can do about this, but snow removal, not just putting it covering curbs, but in parking lots. And I've seen it in city parking lots where the snow is put in the accessible parking stall.
Yeah.
So that's the place where I would want to park my car. I can't because it's covered in snow.
Okay, that's great, thank you. Okay, Alexandria?
Yes, an area of interest for me that I think wraps around into all departments would be around communications and accessible communication, specifically plain language resources, plain language throughout the all website communications, which serves individuals with cognitive impairments as well as those with low literacy, and new Canadians or English as an alternate language as well. So that's something that would be a priority for me, and I would like to keep on that.
That's great. I just read that about the federal government too, trying to get back to plain language. They were there for a while and then they've gone back to. Mr. Sims?
Yeah, Chair, thanks, Chair. I can speak a little bit to that. Our communications manager is actually bringing that forward, a sort of a revised or updated communication strategy, which touches on exactly what you just said, getting back to plain language, getting back to, and now we can speak to this in much greater depth, but certainly on our own website to try and simplify and make it much more accessible.
Okay, so perhaps too, then we could maybe include her report for committee members.
I think it's coming to GPC in the end of June.
Yeah, so once we get that report, it'd be great if we could just send it out so that the committee can see what the report is. And then if a committee member sees it and has some concerns, please send an email requesting it be added to the agenda. Does that make sense here?
Just to add to what Bill said, and part of the rollout of that communications plan is, like you mentioned, accessibility. We realize is a huge thing we need to focus on, plain language, and then other ways of making the website more accessible. And we're going to be doing some training as well for the website user group members, which are in various departments all across the city, with that focus in particular.
Great, thank you. Richard?
So that would include alt text, right?
Correct.
Sure. I really liked the like seeing the email that had been shared regarding employment and employability of people with disabilities within the city of Nanaimo. I think that either a internship program or something similar would be great to
Okay,
consider.
yeah, we're gonna talk about that, that is on our list, so I'll ask you to wait until that comes forward to meeting and to think about that, because I will be looking for this committee, what their recommendations are that to bring to council. So but that was just for information purposes today, so that I had asked for that to be a topic at one of our future meetings, so it gives everybody an opportunity to really look at all that stuff. And
Forgive me for being a keener.
oh, you always are, you know I'll put you back. Okay, so seeing no other questions, I want to bring us back to what Tammy had asked about. Are people able to make a 3:30 start? Yes or no? I'm gonna go around the table. Wendy?
Yes.
No.
No? Yeah,
I'm not sure, I'd have to.
okay. Yeah,
Yes.
Works for me.
so we have 2 no's, so, oh, sorry, I forgot Jocelyn and Tanya, or, yeah. Jocelyn,
It's fine with me.
Tammy?
Yeah, I can do it.
Okay, so we have 2 that can't. Tanya, are you able to sort of gear yourself?
Pardon?
Are you able to try and get here for 4? Because we normally can, a lot of times like today, we're gonna be finished by 1:45. Would that give you enough time to get to your next meeting?
Absolutely, yep.
Okay, so what we could do too is if there's something really important on the agenda and it's in a spot that you don't think we're gonna get to and you're still here, please ask for it to be moved so that you can address it.
That sounds good.
Yeah, that would probably solve the problem. Because
Yeah,
usually it's new
absolutely.
business at the end, but if there's a piece of new business that you're really interested in, ask if it can be moved forward. Does that work for you?
Yep,
Great.
absolutely.
Okay, perfect.
Yeah, that's a perfect reminder that before the committee adopts the agenda at the beginning, that's the time that you would bring it up and ask to have your items moved to the top, and then we would reorder it and then adopt the agenda as amended.
And if you know about it beforehand, please send it out first, Tanya, because if we forget, legislative services will catch it.
Okay, perfect, thank you.
Great. Okay, is there any other things or anything else anybody else would like to say before I ask for a motion to adjourn? Well, thank you very much, everybody. I really appreciate it. And then I'm hoping we get as much work done as last time, and I know we will, hopefully even more. I would say that the city is ahead of a lot of cities, but there's still work to do. But we want to be the leader in this, and I want to push us so that we are the leader and continue to be the leader. And again, really important, bring your ideas to the table. There's no such thing as a bad idea. It may be that we can't do it for certain reasons, but we'll tell you why. So really looking forward to really good, frank discussion. So looking for a motion to adjourn. Moved by Wendy, seconded by Linda. All in favor? Great, thanks everybody. Take care.
Thank you.
There's a lot of things I see.